A very good morning to all the dignitaries and students here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you to the induction program by School of Legal Studies CUSAT. This is a new beginning and a much awaited moment in every student's life. So, first of all, a hearty welcome to all the new entrants to SLS family. And today we have some eminent personalities in the field of law with us today. We are privileged to have Honorable Retired Justice J. Chelameswar, former Judge Supreme Court of India, and Advocate Avani Bansal, Advocate Supreme Court of India, to address us today. And let me first invite Dr. Vani Kesari, Director School of Legal Studies, to formally welcome all who are present here today. I invite you, ma'am.
Thank you, Namita. Esteemed Speaker of the Day, Justice Chelameswar, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, Advocate Avani Bansal, the lawyer, prominent lawyer in Supreme Court of India, my senior faculty colleague, Dr. P.S. Seema, my other faculty colleagues, and all the new freshers who have opted our law school and have joined our law school for the academic session 2021. A warm good morning to all and a hearty welcome to each one of you to the SLS family. In fact, this is a privileged moment for all of us since in this year we have two prominent personalities, especially Justice Chelameswar, who gives us almost every support in all possible ways in whichever program which we invite him. So we are honored by your presence here today virtually, as well as Advocate Avani Bansal, who is there with us accepting our invitation. Ma'am, it's a great privilege to have you here, and it's really nice to see both of you with all of us. In fact, as you know, this is a challenging phase of time for not only the country or the world as such, but also for a state like Kerala, because as of now, all the educational institutions have been declared holiday today due to imminent floods, due to rain, as well as the COVID spread of COVID in the state of Kerala. As we were planning to organize such an induction program in our institution, the spontaneous response from my academicians or my faculty colleagues was that we need to request Justice Chelameswar to be part of this initiative. I was wonderstruck as to what is really the reason behind it, because I am a great fan of him, and what made my colleagues also to suggest his name for this particular program. In fact, you find that, of course, his judicial statecraft, as well as his commitment, moral commitment to the institution he represented, is known to everybody. But the most inspiring part of his personality is that his humility. Being part of a great institution, when he came to our institution, he inspired us, all of us, in such a way that we wanted him to be in this particular program, so as to inspire our own students who are entering into the portals of our law school at this challenging phase of time. In fact, all of us know that law is a discipline which is interesting and exciting. And the study of law is not only elevates the personality of an individual, but also is a study of law encourages a professional who takes up the law as his profession to be a problem solver. So you find that this is an interesting field of study, and a field where you can serve the most vulnerable in the society. And I, on behalf of the institution, formally welcome you, as well as Advocate Avani Bansal. Ma'am, I was wonderstruck again by your profile. You were studying in HNLU, then you studied at Oxford, Harvard, etc. But the most sweet part of it, which I would say, is that my name is secretly involved within your name, Avani Bansal. So my name is there in within your name, and that makes me most special and sweet for me. So I invite you to this particular and welcome you to this particular program. And I also welcome the faculty members of this institution, as well as all the students who have joined our institution. A warm and hearty welcome to all. And I also thank the comperer, Namita George, and all the organizing team, which is the senior students of this department, for giving us all the support in organizing this program. Thank you once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the hearty welcome. Next, before inviting the key speaker of the day, Honorable Retired Justice T. Chelameswar, who was a former judge of the Supreme Court, I would like to briefly throw light on his profile as an apex court judge. Justice T. Chelameswar was one among the prominent judges of the Supreme Court who had made an indelible mark in the Indian judiciary with the several judicial decisions and bold stance. As a judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Chelameswar was involved in landmark cases like Declaration of Right to Privacy as a Fundamental Right and Constitutional Amendment of NJAC. His 7 year long tenure as a Supreme Court judge saw many landmark decisions and unprecedented moves which will be marked in the history of Indian judiciary for sure. Sir, we are very honored to have you here with us today. I invite you, sir, with utmost respect for the keynote address.
Thank you. Thank you, Namita. Now, tell me, what is the time assigned to me
So the
for this?
program can last up to 1 p.m.
Oh, no, no. I don't propose. I can't tell you.
So you can just like you can take
30 minutes is all right?
yes, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
30
Sure.
minutes. Very good. Okay. So, a very good morning to all of you. Since I can't mention everybody by name, I'll mention the names of Vani and Avani. So, and other members of the faculty, students, and if there is anybody else who doesn't belong to either of these categories, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it is an important day in the life of all the youngsters when they enter a professional course. And I presume that the induction program, I think the actual classes have commenced or not, I'm not very sure. I presume that they'll commence after this induction program. It doesn't matter if they had already commenced a few days back, doesn't matter. It is some kind of a event which represents the beginning of the program. Now, like all of you students, I was also a student of the Andhra University, of course. I haven't ceased to be a student in the larger sense of it. But in the formal sense of going to the college and writing the examination, when I'm talking about a student today, I'm talking about my being a student in Andhra University, as a student who went to the classroom or occasionally bunked the class those days. Not many times, sir. By and large, I was a very disciplined student. Very rarely I bunked the class. When we entered the college, very first class, who was the teacher, used to give us a brief introductory, should I say, sermon. Sermon may sound a little pompous, but anyway, for the time being, we can choose that word. One reason is those days we didn't have this advantage of this internet where we could invite anybody, starting from the President of America or the Prime Minister of India or anybody for a program. Those days it was simply, if you're inviting somebody, it simply meant the person physically traveling all the way from wherever the person is located to the place. And second thing is, of course, maybe those days people really didn't. I don't know whether really believe that some sitting judge or former judge is really required to lecture the students on the induction day. Though there were a couple of occasions when I was a student of the Andhra University Law College, a couple of judges, one sitting judge of the High Court, who later became the Chief Justice of Andhra Pradesh, and one retired judge of the Supreme Court, Justice P. Jagannath Reddy, who at that point of time, after laying down the office as the judge of the Supreme Court, became the Vice Chancellor of the Usmania University. They visited the Andhra University on our invitation and addressed us. Not that these things never happened. Anyway, well, of late, with the advancement of technology, it's possible to invite, and it's possible for people like me to participate also because of the advantage of science and technology. Now, I hope I am audible. First of all, with these programs, one thing I always worried is whether the speaker is really audible. Warning,
Yes,
is
sir,
it?
yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. At any point of time, if it's not audible, it could be for any reason, because of my problem of my vocal cords or because of the problem of the internet, for any reason. If it is not audible, please let me know. Now, my dear young children, I am sure each one of you has a specific reason for choosing the study of law. It's not necessarily that all of you share the same reason or same ideal for choosing the study of law. You may have different reasons. And in fact, when you're talking about this thing, I remember one of the first classes of my law college days. We used to have a teacher called Professor Ramchandra Rao, who taught us criminal procedure code. Criminal procedure code and a couple of other subjects he taught us. One of the early days, maybe the first week or 10 days when he addressed us in the classroom. I remember he made a very sarcastic statement. Boys, mine was all boys. Those days, this many girls were not getting into the law class. So it was a boys' class. In the second section, there used to be 5 or 6 girls. Now, this gentleman, Professor Ramchandra, said, boys, all of you are here because you couldn't be anywhere else, he said. But that's not the situation today. Those days, the study, at least for our generation, for the generations which belonged to the early 20th century Indians, law was a preferred branch of study. But post-independence, at least for a period of 25 years, it was certainly not a preferred branch of study. Some of the best minds opted for the study of medicine, technology. And next preference was, though it was not a discipline as such, but a career option of getting into civil service. Some of the more sharper minds chose the civil service as a career option. Therefore, they studied something which they thought was would give them that opportunity. And Those who could not get in any one of these things eventually landed up in the law school, barring a few exceptions, barring very few exceptions. So that's what Professor Ramchandra meant when he said, all of you are here because you couldn't be anywhere else. But the situation has changed. But I might tell you a personal note. My father was totally against my getting into the law college. But I was doing my MSc physics. For some reason, well, it's not necessary, I don't want to bore you with that, but for some reason, I discontinued the study of physics and came back to the law school. My father was a very unhappy man. He didn't speak to me for one full year. That's a different matter. Now, when I look back into these things, post 80, broadly mid 80s, 85 or so, slowly the study of law started picking up glamour. Young boys and girls started opting for the study of law. And from 90s, the urge to study law or the clamor to get into a law college has considerably increased. Considerably increased. Because nowadays, all of you know, to get into a law school, you have to write a competitive examination. Nowadays, simply walk into the law college, hand over the application, and just pay the fee and get into the college. It's not like today's. And there is an all India competitive examination, and all of the system. Most all of you must have gone through it. How is it that the study of law gained such prominence? In these years. One reason is, may not be the only reason, of course, but one reason, and for a majority of the law students, or a good number of law students, this is the reason which prompts them to get into this. A career in law today offers a very, very lucrative financial prospect. And I always joke, some of the successful lawyers in this country, the so-called top-line lawyers, make more money than a successful film star like Amitabh Bachchan or Rajinikanth, or whoever it is, you can name whatever. Or you want a foreign example, I don't know, Brad Pitt, or whatever it is. Now, that's a factor which ultimately a large number of the members of the society, when they pick up the study of any branch, the basic idea is to make a living out of it. There's nothing wrong about it. Very few get into it purely out of love for it. And generally, those who get into the study of any particular course, let us say law course, for love of the subject, eventually end up as Vani Kesaris. They end up as academicians. They don't get into the profession. Now, no doubt this profession offers today. Even earlier days also, even those days when not many people were getting into the study of law, for a successful lawyer, the profession offered a very handsome reward for successful. And what contributes to the success of a lawyer, there is a different story. I'll come to it later. But the profession always offered a very handsome reward for a successful lawyer. How many of them would succeed is a different story. It depends on the hard work a lawyer puts in, plus the opportunities. Even the most brilliant, I have seen the most brilliant lawyers withering away in this profession for lack of opportunity, or for certain other reasons which I don't want to discuss today. It is always a combination of your own hard work, your own intelligence, and an opportunity. If all these three factors coincide, you become a successful lawyer. And then the rest, of course, is a fine story. So therefore, when you get into the law college, the idea is opportunities, whether you can create for yourself or they present themselves, is a matter of, that's another matter which requires a great deal of expert study. What are those opportunities and how those opportunities come? I'm not going to it at this stage on the day when you're getting into the college. But to equip yourself to become a competent lawyer is purely in your hands. That nobody else can help you, or nobody else is going to gift you that. Others, teachers like Vani, or anybody else, any other teacher, because I know her, I know the name that I mentioned. Any teacher, teachers can only guide you. They can only guide you how to study law, what is the approach you should adopt. And after that, for a practicing lawyer, every day and every case is an examination. That's my personal opinion. That's my view. That's how I function all through my career as a lawyer and as a judge. The day I personally believe the day any lawyer or judge for the judges are part of the legal profession. They have taken a specific role. The day a lawyer feels that he knows the law, my opinion, the growth of that lawyer is over. You may still make money with that comfortable fee. Because money comes for various reasons. But the growth of the lawyer is stunted there. Please remember, every case, when a lawyer takes up a case, a judge is called upon to decide. It may have facets which had not been studied by the lawyer or the judge till then. Both of them might know that branch of law broadly. Or some of these lawyers or judges might be specialists in a particular branch of law. But even then, nobody knows the nuances, first of all, the body of law, and also the nuances of law. But nobody can claim to know completely. In fact, there's a famous anecdote. I'm sure now that you have gotten to the law college, by now you have acquainted yourself with the names of some legends of the legal profession in this country. There used to be a legend in our previous generation, a man called N.A. Palkhiwala. The legend of a lawyer, a great scholar, more than being a successful lawyer, a great scholar. When he was invited, I don't remember exactly today, whether Bombay University or some university, to address the student, he opened the address by saying, "My fellow students." He was not pretending. He was a very, very sincere man in life. Every bit of him was sincerity. I've known him. I met him a few times, 3-4 times. Such a with all his learning and earning, was such a humble human being. When he said, "My fellow students," he's believed even at that stage he was still a student of law. So if anybody else, any one of us believe that we know the law, apart from indicating that we become very arrogant, it only indicates that we will stop learning. Afterwards, we will not be of any great use to this profession. So, my dear students, please remember, it's a constant study. And only those of you who enjoy studying law on a continuous basis, it can't become a formality because we have to become a successful lawyer. Therefore, every day 6 hours you mug up one book, and then that's not going to work out that way. A constant study, there is a way of studying law. And those who enjoy that kind of a study of law will, in my opinion, succeed in the profession sooner or later, depending on the opportunities when they come. In some cases, for various reasons in this society. The opportunity may come a little earlier, a little later. But if you are ready by the time the opportunity presents itself, you know how to study the law, how to handle question, how to handle a question. There's no way you can fail in this profession. You will succeed in the profession. I will tell you a little. I'll tell you a little family story. My maternal grandfather was a lawyer. 1924 vintage. He was enrolled in 1924. My father, three of my uncles were lawyers in the family. I believe my grandfather used to tell the youngsters, including his own family members who are in the profession, other juniors in the office, you must always be prepared. If you want to study the law, after a client comes to you, the client won't come to you. You'll go to a lawyer who has already studied the law. You must be, in fact, I used to give an example, I believe. My father told me. Later, after he resumed talking to me after getting into the law college, a year later, he told me this story. When my grandfather was very young at the bar, maybe 3-4 years old, and normally, nowadays, at least youngsters with 3-4 years standing get opportunities. I've seen in the Supreme Court people with 2 years standing up before the Supreme Court and arguing, and it was simply unimaginable in our days. Right or wrong, I'm not saying about it. I'm not on that point. If you're prepared, well-prepared youngster, most welcome. I never discourage a youngster coming to my court and arguing, provided he is prepared. Now, but those days, it was very difficult for an youngster. Now, when my grandfather was just 2 or 3 years old at the bar, one of his neighbors came to him. Even obviously, his neighbor also was not a very, very, very well-off person, man of moderate means. Old man. He went to my grandfather. He wanted a will to be prepared. So asked, and since he couldn't afford a big lawyer, he thought, for a layman in the sense, not a law student, he doesn't really know the difference between Manipal Kiwala or the local lawyer. For anybody where there is a nameplate so-and-so advocate is good enough for him. So he walked in and asked my grandfather, I want to write a will. So my grandfather was a very hardworking man. Eventually, he was a very successful man also. So he said, okay, I'll write. So he took all the necessary data. He knew that much. If you have to write a will, first of all, you must collect all the data. What is this man? What is his background? How many members of the family are there? Whether is a Hindu, Muslim, Christian? This is the basic data which is required to be collected. And how he proposes to distribute his property. All this information collected. And after collecting all the material, he told the gentleman, I believe, just come 2 days later, I'll prepare the will in the meanwhile. Now, after that man left, so the lawyer went to the court library because he didn't have a library of his own those days. He was too young to have a library. Went to the local district court library, picked up a textbook on wills. This is a famous textbook, famous of our generations. I don't know if it's still famous. What one? Theobald on Wills. Is it still a famous book? Theobald on Wills. Avani, is it? Okay.
Yes, I'm not, I think.
Good library.
Yes. Okay.
So
I'm not sure of it.
Common Law Library published it some time back. Anyway, it's all right. He went and picked up the book, studied it to the best of his ability, because a 3-year-old's understanding of things would certainly not be the 30-year-old lawyer's understanding of things. Anyway, with all the things, he studied, prepared a will. He spent 2 full nights without sleep to study that. Then prepared a will, for which those days in 1930s, my grandfather was paid 5 rupees as a fee. And now it's not the end of the story. So after this, my grandfather used to tell, I believe, all the youngsters. And 20 years later, he wrote a will for one of the local big landlords who owned some, huge property, some 3,000 acres of agricultural land, that kind of a gentleman. That by then my grandfather had become a big lawyer, 20 years, 30 years of professional experience. So that gentleman came, he wanted a will to be prepared. My grandfather prepared the will. And my grandfather, I believe, used to mischievously tell the juniors, Smiley, I didn't open any book, I just dictated the will. But point is, the foundation was laid when he worked for that 5 rupees. That was the study. Okay, it doesn't stop it. A lawyer must keep on honing his skills from time to time. You read it, and 20 years later, the law might be slightly different or totally different. It all depends. You must keep pace with the changing, the developments of law. So broadly, this is the nature of the legal profession. And this is only one aspect of success. Second thing is this one aspect I'll mention and stop it here. Please remember, it's not just simply money, a profession which affords you an opportunity to make money. It is something more. If we are living in a society, what kind of a society are we living in? And what kind of a society do we wish to live are questions which each one of us is required to ask ourselves and decide for ourselves what is it. Are we happy with the existing state of affairs in this society? If we are not happy with the existing state of affairs in the society, what are those factors which make us not very happy or which make us very unhappy? And how are those factors which make us unhappy or not very happy to be handled or rectified is an aspect of the study of law. Now, if you ignore this part of it and simply study law for the purpose of making money, well, of course, you'll succeed, you will make money. If you're hardworking, you'll make money. But at the end of the day, you may not be very happy. So long as the money making goes on, well, all of us are fine, happy. But later years, when you sit back and look at what you have done to the society or what the society has done to you, you may have a few regrets. I'm not saying that merely because you make an attempt, the whole society is going to change overnight. Nothing is going to change. But it's an effort that must always go. And students of law, particularly, any citizen, any student must have this problem before him. So eventually, you're all in now a very protected atmosphere, particularly those of us who have this opportunity of getting into some regular course of education. There are millions of youngsters in this country who can't afford this luxury of going to a college. We have been lucky. We call it lucky. It all depends on your personal beliefs. Whether you call it luck, or if you want to say God is kind to us, whatever way you want to put it, I mean, it's your choice. But please remember, as a matter of fact, all of us are far, far, far more comfortable and better place than millions of children of your own age. A lot of those people work the whole day to earn a livelihood. You still don't have to do that. So remember that we owe an obligation to this society, theoretically, to do something to pay back to the society. If you are not such high-minded, okay, you don't think of this great idea, this old man is talking all platitudes, I don't believe. Okay, don't believe that you owe anything, you got everything out of work. But remember it, if the rest of the society around you is not happy, is besetted with problems, hunger, poverty, your happiness will not survive. It will be destroyed in no time. At least for that limited reason, we must care for the society and fellow human beings. things. So, as students of law, always keep this factor in mind. Study law, be successful lawyers. Lawyers need not necessarily mean all of you should practice. Some of you might become judicial officers, some of you might become lawmakers by becoming legislators or whatever it is. Each one of them, in fact, I remember some time back there was a book published, 100 Great Lawyers. XYZ, so many lawyers. And Gandhiji's name was one of the 100 names. Gandhiji hardly ever practiced. I think he practiced only a few years and afterwards he never bothered about legal practice. But then he became responsible for a major change in the law of this country. So his name becomes a great lawyer. So therefore, in whatever capacity you you continue as a lawyer in this world, please keep what I told you today in mind, if you think it's worth. And I think at the age of 70, I believe that whatever I said is not such utter nonsense. It is something that saying it out of my experience. Please keep these things in mind. Study well. I wish all of you all the success, and I wish you become great lawyers, serve the society. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, it's an honor for me to introduce and welcome Advocate Avani Bansal. She is an advocate in the Supreme Court of India and the founding partner of Avani Bansal Chambers. She is also the founder of The Boom, India's first digital newspaper for women and gender issues. Ma'am, we are very grateful for your time with us. I invite you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Namita. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes.
So let me just begin by saying what an honor it is, Justice Chelameswar, to be a co-speaker with you. And I was feeling, and I wanted to tell this the first thing to all the students here, that dreams do come true. You know, as Sir said, opportunities may come to you late, they may come to you early, depending on circumstances. But in law, if you're sincere, there is nothing that you cannot do. And the reason I was so happy when I heard from CUSAT University and Vani ma'am and the person who made all this possible, and the reason I'm here today, my teacher, Mr. Harishankar sir, I know he's here in the audience. So thank you so much. Because that also says that long after you've studied from your teachers still think of you, and you cannot say no to your teachers. So, big gratitude to my sir. He taught us arbitration, and Vani ma'am, I should tell you, he was one of the finest teachers I had at Bangalore National University. So what I am today, or what I learned at Oxford, Harvard, I think my roots were when I did BLLB at Bangalore National Law University. And the reason, why there are, as Justice Chelameswar said, there is a galaxy, full of bright stars in the Indian legal scenario. Young students, those who may be just starting their legal journey, should know that Justice Chelameswar is a living legend. We hear of people, we hear of Mr. Nani
No,
Palke.
no.
No. Let me allow me to complete my argument, my lord, in like 2 minutes by the watch. I know Justice Chelameswar, and knowing him, from a distance, it feels very much like a Eklavya. You see people from a distance, and you never get an opportunity. I've got an opportunity. Allow me just 1 minute, sir. But I do think that there are people we know, the great Mr. Nani Palke. We know that, the great, Justice Bhagwati, Justice Krishna Iyer. These are people we have heard of. The entire legal books and the jurisprudence is full of these names. But somebody like me who does not come, sir, from a legal background, is a woman, comes from a small town. For me, it's very important. I remember the first time I interned in the Supreme Court of India, I was like, where do I look for inspiration? Because Sir will agree, today there is no dearth of lawyers, my dear students, who can earn very, very well. If money is your priority, you will
Some of them are
definitely...
brilliant, far more brilliant than many lawyers of the previous generations.
Absolutely. So money will come to you. And there are a lot of people who join the legal profession, for the glamour of the legal profession, or for the knowledge that it brings. But I think what Justice Chelameswar sets as an example is that he's the one person I know who has constantly been in the pursuit of justice. And the first thing that you will learn as law students is that while we're in the legal profession, there is a difference between law and justice. What we have in India today is a robust legal system, but we need to go a long, long way to ensure that the end product of what comes up from this legal system is justice. And fighting for justice, mind you, is not an easy task. It is fraught of challenges. And so I just have just two lines that I wanted to read for Sir, and then I want to dive into my topic straight away. So there's a little poem which was, we don't know the author because it was found in a farmer's almanac. And it's called, it's a story written by a little boy to a father, but I think it can be applied to all the teachers. And by teachers here, I mean not just who have formally taught us, including them, of course, but people people we are really inspired by. And these lines come to me, and I devote them to you. And the lines say, and I quote, "There are little eyes upon you, and they're watching night and day. There are little ears that quickly, that take in every word you say. There are little hands all eager to do all things you do. And a little boy, and I will add a girl who's dreaming of the day he or she will be like you." So I think that the moral courage that you've shown is absolutely exemplary for people like me. And with that moral courage, I think we have an example. When all of you, my dear students, start on a new path, a path of becoming a lawyer. And as Sir said, we're all going to be students. All of us are going to be students for all our lives. But the first thing you got to ask yourself is, what's my goal? What's my destination? What do I want? And so the first tip, and because Sil has talked about a lot of experiences, what I'm going to do is use my 30 minutes, Vani ma'am, to just try and lay down a roadmap, share a few tips and techniques which I wish I knew when I was starting my legal journey. So what I'm sharing with you today is a culmination of 8 years of my own legal journey. So the first thing I tell all of you is that take a blank piece of paper and ask yourself the question, why law for me? Why am I pursuing the law? And whatever answer it is, do not judge yourself. Whatever answer you can think of as the best answer today is an honest answer today. Write it on a piece of paper and paste it in front of you, in your room, on your work desk, wherever you will see this. And the reason that's important is because on this path of law, there are several times that you will maybe second guess your choice, when things will get hard, when you will think, oh, this is just too much work. And most importantly, there will be crossroads where you will have to make some fundamental strategic choices. For example, where do you want to intern? Do you want to pursue litigation or corporate law? Do you want to practice in India? Do you want to practice abroad? What sort of lawyer do you want to be? And in some cases, do you even want to pursue law? So whatever is your answer, why are you pursuing law? Put it on a piece of paper and let it act as an inspiration for you. Now, my first audience is that category of students who may think that, our parents inspired us to get into a law school, I got into a law school. Some of you may think, I tried the engineering exam, didn't make it, I thought law was the second best option, I came to law. Essentially, students who are very sharp, intelligent, smart, but may think that they may not end up becoming a lawyer. Or they can't imagine right now wearing a black robe and asking for tariq pe tariq. So should those students be thinking, what am I doing at law school? And to them, I say, the beauty of law as an education is, even if you don't end up becoming a lawyer, this degree, a 5-year LL.B course, will empower you in a way that I think few professional courses can. And I'll give you the reason why. If you ended up at a medical college, or let's say at an engineering college, the field of your study is rather limited, right? So for example, if you were to study for becoming a doctor, there is a certain category, a scope of work that would be limited for you. But the beauty of law, and I think law is singularly most fascinating in that aspect, that the entire world is your subject matter. Open up a newspaper, online or a physical newspaper. Just browse through any major daily and pay attention on the headlines. You will see that on the cover page of a physical newspaper or at the front page of any website of a leading newspaper today, at least 70 to 80% of headlines have a direct link with law. And why is that? Because law is everywhere, right? There is a singer in the country who's very famous, has come up with the latest record album, and finds out that their producers are not paying them, or let's say that there is some kind of an intellectual property rights violation. They need a lawyer. Now, you may not know anything about the music industry, but as a lawyer, not only will you be needed to know the law, you will be needed to know how the intricacies of that music system works. Let's say, there is, we know we are all passionate about cricket in India, right? Let's say there is a tournament going on and a particular player complains that, there has been a discrimination in selection process. So how do we select who represents India at an international stage? You may know nothing about cricket, but then as a lawyer, you got to study it. The point I'm making is, if you want to be a lawyer, you should be fascinated about everything. And which is why we have had great lawyers who will tell you, read literature, because literature is what's going to form your mind. They will say, read poetry, because poetry will give you that flow which you need when you're writing a long judgments and still trying to convey your message in a way that will go for the hearts, that will capture hearts. So you got to read everything. And isn't that fascinating? I thought to myself, that's extremely fascinating. And that's one of the reasons I thought, irrespective of whether I end up becoming a lawyer or not, this is a degree that I want to pursue. Now, what I'm going to do is, divide the rest of my part of the speech into three broad sections, right? And I want to essentially give you what we call an eagle's perspective on what your 5 years could look like. I'm not going to focus too much on what lies after law school because that's a conversation for another time. But, if you're standing at day one of your law school today, this is an induction program, what do 5 years look like? And what should they look like? And because Justice Chelameswar Vani ma'am, I'm a first generation lawyer. So when I started law school, I really didn't have much guidance around me. My father doesn't speak English. He speaks Hindi. But he was a major inspiration for why I got into law school. But he told me only one thing. He said, every day you wake up, you give your best and do not worry about the rest. Just one day at a time. But at the same time, he also said, you will never have full information. But the more information you have, the more you can plan. And a lot of law students have this challenge that they think that, they are maybe, the first person in the family to be pursuing law. And they think, well, how do I compete with somebody whose parents are judges, whose parents are senior advocates? They're always going to have an edge over me. Or some of you may think, my language is not so great. I can't speak English so well, or I hesitate in front of, other people. How am I going to be a lawyer, right? Or some of you may think, I have a stage fright. I can never go on stage and speak. How am I going to be a lawyer? So essentially, you might think that there are various reasons that put you behind others. And to you, I say, please remember, all of you who have entered CUSAT, in life, none of us start running from the same point. We are wrong in thinking that if we're all given the same university, the same degree, the same Bani ma'am, the same Harishankar sir to teach, we're all going to start the same. No. It doesn't matter where you start. Some of you, may be more confident with better language. Some of you, not so. Some of you may have got more opportunities at your school time. Some of you may not have done so. But remember, it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you will end. And to end at a place, sir, you wanted to say
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Sorry for the interruption.
No.
Tell all the youngsters whether I speak good English or bad English today is besides the point. I speak some English. But tell the students, by the time I entered the college, completed my schooling and went to the Madras Loyola College for my undergraduation, I couldn't speak one full sentence of English even for my dear life. If somebody were to hold a gun to my head, I couldn't speak a one full sentence of English. I picked up there.
Yeah.
You can always learn. It's never late.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry for the interruption.
No, absolutely, sir, absolutely. And it's very, it's good that you put yourself as an example, because I know a lot of students, sir, those who are winners, they know they can hit the ground running. But I'm speaking to that student in the class who thinks, am I a misfit here? Maybe I'm not in the top 1%. So the first thing is, drop the identity that you had when you were at school. Some of you may have seen this movie called Avatar, right? It's essentially, I say use the movie Avatar in a different way. And now that you're in the first year of law school, tell yourself, I am going to choose an avatar for me that I want to be. For example, let's say you were the girl who was the most shy girl in the class in school, never spoke, never participated in a debate competition. That time is gone. This is now a transition phase. And you are starting a new journey where you can say, I'm going to be the girl who everybody in my batch knows to be the most vocal girl, right? Or I'm going to be the boy who's not going to hesitate in asking my friends what is the pronunciation of a particular English word that I may not be so confident of. Or that if I was an introvert, now I'm trying to, be an extrovert. Or if I never read a single book in my school life, I'm going to kill it. Not literally kill, but I'm going to kill in terms of, the number of hours I spend in the library. So choose the avatar and do not get limited by the identity that you've created for yourself at the school time. That's the first point. The second point, and Justice Chelameswar, when I went to Hidayatullah National Law University, we didn't have a fancy campus. We were given a small government building next to the governor's house in Raipur. And my professor, Professor Shanta Kumar, who's now the Vice Chancellor of Gujarat National Law University, I was 1 week into college and he called me. And amongst other things he was telling me, he just made a sentence that stuck with me for my entire life of law school. He said, law school, Avani, is not a 400 meters race. It is not a relay that you start running slowly and only pick up speed when you're at the finishing line. He said, law school is a 100 meters race. You start with full speed and you exit the doors of law school running at full speed. And the reason I tell you is a lot of people around you, my dear students, you're in your first year, will tell you, Abhi pehla saal hai, this is just the first year, relax, take it easy, party. And I'm a big fan of partying, okay? But I'm a big fan of partying when I say study hard and party harder. But the study hard still remains, okay? So anybody who tells you this is just the first year, relax, don't worry about it, is giving you wrong advice. It is quintessential that you spend every single day of your law school making the most of it, because only then you're going to exit out of the law school gates running. And when we say exit out of the law school gates running, what do we mean? The third mistake that a lot of young students do, and I've seen a lot of people do it, it took me some time to realize that I don't want to do it, is to compare yourself with the person sitting on your left and the person sitting on your right. Let's say there is Hannah in the room, and there is Akash, and there is Krishna, and there is Preeti, right? And you say, well, I'm smarter than Hannah, and I'm smarter than Preeti, so I'm the smartest kid in the block. Or because I'm in the 1% category, I'm the smartest kid in the block. One thing COVID should teach us is these physical boundaries should not let us limit our imagination. And so the homework I'm giving to each one of you who's here in this room listening to me today is this. Can you set a yardstick for yourself where you say, when I graduate out of law school from CUSAT University, I am not just going to be the top 1% in my class. Nay, I'm not even going to be the top 1% in my district. I'm not going to be just in the top 1% of Kerala. I'm not even going to be in the top 1% comparable to all the top law schools in India, NLS, NALSAR, NUJS, HNLU. I am going to try and be the student that if I were put in a competition with the world's top law school, I should be able to win. I'm not a sports fan, Justice Chelameswar ma'am, but I recently heard a story about the world's #1 tennis player. And sir, that story hit me so hard. So the guy is called Novak Djokovic. He's a Serbian player. Now, those who know tennis know that the world of tennis for the longest time, for decades, were dominated by two people, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. And this guy comes out of nowhere. He's about 18 years old. And he says, I am going to publicly declares, I am going to break every world record that there is in world tennis. And people are laughing at him like, what a joker. Like, we have gods, we have two gods, and the competition is between these two gods. There is no room for a third person. And this guy comes in, and there are 4 Grand Slams in tennis. He wins all 4 of them back to back. And now there is the 5th one, and no person ever in history has won all the top 5 awards back to back in 1 year. So imagine he has won 4, he's in the 5th game, and he's on the last ball. And how he hits that last ball is going to determine whether history is created that day or not. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I mean, I'm not interested in tennis, but I'm thinking to myself, wow, what is the sort of mental training required for a person to be in that moment and not be pressured and not be anxious? And the entire crowd in the audience is going against him because, they're like, no, we don't want you to win because he's been so open, I will win. Not arrogantly, but kind of just putting the yardstick right? And the world wants him to lose, and he wins. And I think to myself, until we are preparing ourselves for a battle like that, where we say, in our lifetimes, you're all 18, 19 years today, can you promise yourself that we are going to set a yardstick so high that when we are 70 years, when we are Justice Chelmeshwar's age, we're going to remember we heard Justice Chelmeshwar when we started the journey, and today, can we say, when you're 70 years, can you say that Indian legal system is the best legal system around the world? So dream not small, dream big, and work towards it. It's one thing to say, I am going to have the best yardstick, I'm going to be the best lawyer, la 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 la. But the question is, then are you ready to put in that kind of work on an everyday basis? Michael Phelps, we all know he's an Olympian swimmer, sir, and the normal amount of calories that any human being can, consume on a daily basis is 3,600. So if you want to have all that cake and all that ice cream and all the things you shouldn't have, you won't be able to consume more than 3,600 calories. This guy, for 16 years, is in training, consuming 8,000 calories and swimming for about 8 to 9 hours. If we were to have, 4,000 calories, we will throw up. My point is, do not worry about what you have, what you don't have. Do not worry about, at CUSAT, I don't have this, I don't have that. Don't worry about what others have. Don't say I don't have an opportunity. Don't say my parents can't fund me. Don't say I don't have books. Find out a way. And be so obsessed about giving your best. Trust me, you will find a way. The famous book by Paul Coelho, Alchemist. When you're ready, the universe conspires. The question is, are you ready? So when you start, aim big, set your yardstick high, do not compare with your peers, and hit the ground running. Now comes the second middle phase of your law school. A lot of students, will have to go for internships. They will participate in moot court activities, and they will write publication. They will write research papers. Now, on that, my first major tip is, ants, cheetah, the small insects we have in our rooms, black color ants. Did you know that ant is the only animal which is capable of taking 200% more load on its shoulder? An elephant is a huge animal, but an elephant cannot take the same weight on its body like an ant can. So when you're in your first year, be like the ant. Take as much as you can on your shoulders because that's what your training is. Don't think I'm going to go for the biggest moot competitions, Jessups, Henry Duna, William Civis, what have you. There are tons of them, Stetson. I'm going to go for them in the fourth year, final year. Prepare for those competitions in your first year, second year. Because the more you fail and the sooner you fail, the more you will be able to know what does the world out there look like. So go for opportunities as big as possible in the mooting arena as early as possible. Secondly, the only process of learning is by learning, right? So in the first year, no question is a bad question. In fact, Justice Chelmeshwar will agree with me that even at this stage in his life, there is no question that's a bad question. You don't know something, you raise your hand and you ask it. You don't hesitate. Professor, is this going to be a bad question? Professor, is this a stupid question? No. Your questions will frame you. So one thing we as lawyers should learn is how to ask the right questions. I think that is quintessential. And the more right questions you ask, the more you will learn, the quicker will be your speed. Third thing, when you go for your internships, you may not in the first instance get your dream internship, right? So for example, Justice Chelmeshwar, I wanted to work with Mr. Nariman, the senior Nariman, for my entire law school life. These are names you will be hearing of. 5 years of law school from Hidayatullah National Law University, I wrote to him every vacation, long email with my CV, saying, "Sir, I want to work with you. You know, you give me any task, tell me anything. I just somehow want to work with you." So 5 years, every single vacation, I never got a reply from his office. And of course, I imagined that, his is a busy office. I never got a reply from his office. The first year, when I went to pursue my first master's from Oxford, BCL, from Oxford, we would have like a 1 month break in India, called, in Oxford. So I wrote to to Mr. Nariman from my Oxford email ID. And I said, "Sir, now I am come for masters. This is a 6 year I'm writing to you. I really want to intern with you. And I want to come down from Oxford for 1 month and intern with you." Told me, "Okay, ask Oxford, Faculty of Law's head to write me a letter recommending you." And I was hesitant. I didn't know, if he's going to write me a recommendation or not. I requested and I said, "Listen, this is a doyen of constitutional law. Constitutional law is my area. I want to intern with him." And he very, quickly just gave me a very good recommendation and sent it to Mr. Nariman. The next day, I got my internship confirmed. The point I'm making is, sometimes our generation, we give up too soon. You don't get what you want the first time. You're like, "It isn't happening." So for those of you who think you don't have internship opportunities, tell yourself the McDonald's story. What is a McDonald's story? We all know McDonald's is this big, food chain, right? Having branches around the world. But do you know that the founder of McDonald's, before selling his first burger, tried knocking 100 doors, telling people, "Please taste my burger for free and tell me how it is." And people would just, walk away without even bothering to open the door and try his burger. So unless you send 100 good tweaked internships application, and it's not that you make one internship application and you send it to 100 people. You got to understand, if you're applying to my chamber, you got to know what kind of practice do I do. If you just say, "Ma'am, I'm interested in, corporate law and technology law," then I'll be like, "I know this person hasn't done the homework." So doing the homework is key. And making 100 applications and then knowing that only if one works, your job is done. When people look at my profile, they sometimes think, "How did you do 14 internships during law school? How did you go for 10 moot competitions, winning, the best oralist award in 5?" And I always tell them, most students had a CV of success. I was more interested in having a CV of attempts. So if you look at my CV of attempts, if you look at how many places I made an application and did not get through, my CV of success will look very, very small to you. So, you need to put as many arrows as you can, fire as many shots as you can, and then know if you're lucky and if you're doing everything right, probably one will hit the eye. Okay? So do not be scared of and do not give up very easily. The third thing, adopt what I call a ladder approach. This is the first time I interned with an advocate, Ms. Aparna Bhatt. She does a lot of extremely good cases in human rights, and especially fighting for women's rights in the High Court, but also the Supreme Court, now more and more so the Supreme Court of India. The first time I worked with her, I was very, very inspired. I'd already done my 3 internships before that. And then I wanted to work with a judge of the Supreme Court, but I didn't know at the time how to do it. So I requested Aparna ma'am to guide me as to how to go about building my next internship. Whatever internship you go for, rest assured, if you do good work, you will be given an internship certificate. But what you need to do is use that to say, what are the other opportunities I can build from this particular internship? And that's how then I got an internship with Justice Dalveer Bhandari, who we now all know is making us proud at International Court of Justice. And then at Justice Dalveer Bhandari's office, there was a person who had been working with him for a very long time. He recommended and he said, "Why don't you go to International Society of International Law?" Because I wanted to work on public international law. So he spoke to some people and made sure my application moves forward. The point is, don't worry if you're a student who thinks I have no guidance today. Don't worry about figuring out the entire end of the tunnel. See what's in front of you and use that opportunity to figure out the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. Okay. Now the other thing about law school is that when you're at law school, a lot of times students are confused about whether they want to go for litigation or whether they want to go for corporate law. Even today, I know there are a lot of second year, third year students, Justice Chelameswar, who would come to me and say, "Ma'am, you've gone to Oxford and Harvard. Which one do you think is better? Which one should I go for?" So I say that's a very good question. But tell me, have you looked at the website of Oxford and Harvard? They will say, no, ma'am. I said, do you know when the applications are due? They will say, no, ma'am. I said, do you know some professors who teach at Oxford and Harvard or what courses there are? No, ma'am. And it's not with attitude. I'm trying to give you a key lesson here. First, secure the options in your hand, then choose between them. A lot of us in our head keep thinking, I want to do this and I want to do that. And my question is, have we done the homework? Have we secured these options to be able to make a choice between them? So, if you're confused between litigation and corporate law, intern with a few people who can give you the litigation experience, intern with a few corporate jobs, intern with a judge of the High Court of the Supreme Court, get that experience, and then make your choice as to who you want to work with. Right? Now, the last thing, when you come towards the end of your law school, a lot of students get behind because they're not acting in time. Let me give you one example. So, it was in my fourth year that I got to know that we have what's called magic circle firms. These magic circle firms is a name given to the world's top law firms. And interestingly, they're all in the UK. So the top 4 law firms in the world, Justice Selmeshwar, I will have to request you to mute yourself until when you're not speaking, because that's creating, I think, a little bit of an echo, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So the point I was making is, sir, in our fourth year, Vani ma'am, we got to know in law school that there's something called magic circle firms. What are these magic circle firms? World's best firms. Now, the important bit was they recruit 2 years in advance. So if let's say we are in 2021 and I wanted to apply to a magic circle firm in 2023, I will have to apply in 2021, which means for a 5-year law student, they will have to apply to a top law firm for a job, not an internship, in their 3rd year. And only then they will get to know whether they've been selected for a batch that that law firm will take in after 2 years. Now, if you know in your 4th year that they are taking 2 years in advance, where is the question of applying? And this is what I call the critical information gap. Nobody is dumb. Everybody can do what you want to do, but you need to have the right information. And which means you need to keep your mental antennas up, figuring out what this information are. If you want to apply to Oxford, Harvard, you want to go for the best scholarships, you can't start preparing in your 4th year. By then, the game is done. I tell my students, your 5th year is only a time to, cut what you have sown. The sowing of the seed is done. Whatever you've sown in the initial 3 to 4 years of law school, 5th year, you just collect all of it. There is no time for sowing. And I know students who get active. They think, abhi kya karna hai? What do we sow? Only in their final year. That time, if you're a good student, you're a good farmer, you're a good diligent person, you should have been done with all of this. It's only the time to collect your accolades, spend some good time with your friends and make important career decision as to what next. That will again be a transition year. Okay. So get all of this information and whatever you want to prepare, start early. Now, I'm going to just make a couple of points and then I'm going to stop and then see, if you all have questions for Justice Selmeshwar and me. But one thing is, a lot of people tell me, ma'am, I don't know who to write to. Let's say I need some guidance, but I don't know who to go to. Nobody in my family is in law. And I tell them this, today, there are many people at all levels in the legal profession who will help you with your query, even if you don't know them. You just have to write nicely. If you tell me, ma'am, where do I get their contact details? Social media world, very easy to write. But here is the thing. You take people's help and you will see people are more than willing to help, provided you have done your homework. A lot of times students write to me with queries and they're asking queries which I know can be easily found through a normal Google search. So if you know that you can write to Justice Chelameswar and you've seen him, you've heard him, you know he's a humble person, doesn't mean you misuse it. Doesn't mean you use people as a shortcut. But if you do your work, then write to people and say, sir, I figured out all of this, but this is where my knot is. This is what I'm unable to understand. There'll be people who will be more than willing to help you because they've traversed the entire journey. They understand. But everybody wants to help a candidate who is willing to help himself or herself. Okay? There is inspiration abound. There is information abound. We are living in a world full of possibilities. The dilemma and the paradox of our generation, as they say, is not the dearth of choices. It's not that we don't have choices and options. The paradox of our generation, my dear students, is going to be too many choices. And so you have to ask yourself, what is the choice I want to make and why? Okay? And look for something that will be interesting to you 25 years later. Okay? So, for example, when I was at law school, my focus was environmental law and constitutional law. Now, Justice Chelameswar will know best of all people that it's not easy as a young lawyer, first generation lawyer, to set up practice in constitutional law. It takes a while, before you will get these constitutional law matters. So what do? Do you sit at home and you say, what do I do? They say a good lawyer is a lawyer who prepares for a brief that will come to him or her, right? So today you don't have nothing, but that doesn't mean you can, relax and work. So I chose international environmental law, and that's what I specialized in also at Oxford University, because I think the earth needs a good lawyer, and nobody's willing to be a lawyer for the earth. So can we pick up an area which is needed, which will be in demand, which is where the need will be? So a lot of people say, do we generalize or do we specialize? And I'm always about Buddha's middle path. There is always this natural third path if you know how to synthesize it. So of course, in the beginning years, you need experience. And so you need to do what a generalist would practice. But at the same time, you need to pick up at least one or two areas where you can say you've mastered it, where you can say you've really gone to the depths of it, right? So that's the other point, that, don't choose between generalization, specialization, do your own thing. And finally, I think this is quintessential. And this I dedicate to, my teacher, Mr. Harishankar sir, who is here. He will know, because we have spent time together at HNLU, he will know that even Hidayatullah National Law University, Raipur, has come a long way for what it was 10 years back when sir was teaching and I was a student there, and what it is today. CUSAT is one of India's top law schools. They're doing a phenomenal work. But of course, 10, 15 years, there'll be a lot more that they will be able to do. The first thing you need, if to make the most of this law school journey, is the pride in your heart of being at CUSAT. When we were at Hidayatullah National Law University, there was one small room, with 4 or 5 computers. Most of us would, have to put our names in the slot and, to be able to sit on the computer, etc. But I never felt that, oh, I am not at NLS Bangalore. Oh, I am not at Nalsar, Hyderabad. You know what I told myself? I said, Bangalore is a fancy city. Hyderabad is a fancy city. These students are going to spend so much time going and exploring the malls. Raipur at the time did not have a single mall. So I said, how do I use what I seem as a disadvantage? And I'm not at NLS Bangalore or Nalsar, Hyderabad. I'm at HNLU, which at the time was the 7th in the list. I said, you know what? I'm going to turn it and make use of it. So at HNLU, we didn't have a restriction on how many moods you could go for. So I said in NLS Bangalore, the topper student could go for 1 or 2 or 3 moods because there are so many bright students. In my case, I said, I'm going to turn it to my advantage, go for every single mood I can. So in 1 year, I was going for 3 moods, in addition to ensuring that I have a good CGPA, because your CGPA acts like a passport. You apply to any of the offices, you don't have a good CGPA, you are overall a very good student. Sometimes it is possible that people may not look at you. I know there are flaws in, how you're academically evaluated, and that's another fight for another day. But you still need to have the passport to be able to travel, and you got to do what it needs to be done to apply for the passport. Look at your CGPA like that. The person with the highest CGPA is not necessarily the smartest person in the class, but he or she is the person for whom opportunities will open up. And then finally, the final thing, because I'm a woman, a lot of people ask me, is this a good profession for women? And I say, it is a profession where we, today's women lawyers, are standing on the shoulders of women who have come before us. If they didn't do what they did in their times, we wouldn't be here. And so now, what we do is going to determine whether or not this profession is good for women. So we are not receptors, we are creators. You're a creator in everything you do. You are interested in refugee law, and CUSAT does not offer you an opportunity. Create a club of students. Invite speakers from around the world who are great at refugee law. You want to start a debating club? There is no debating club in CUSAT. Start it. Be an entrepreneur. Because if you approach law with an entrepreneurial spirit, trust me, sky's the limit. With that, I promise to you that any of you who will be listening to me today for this past 40 minutes or so, if you ever need a nudge, you ever need a helping hand, you ever need somebody in the profession who could help you, whatever little help you want, I will be there. I am one message away on LinkedIn. But the only thing is, when you come to me, ensure you've done your homework, because that's what I ensure when I go somewhere. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience. Now that you have a choice because you are all on mute, but I hope, through these online forum, I hope that the energy, and by the way, I've just slept for 2 hours in the night. So I just, had a cup of tea, and I said, I don't want my students to think, did she not sleep last night? Do lawyers not get enough sleep? The truth is sometimes they really don't get sleep. But that's another story for another day. But I hope this energy I was able to convey to you, and you will be in a great place at CUSAT if you're willing to take responsibility, and you have teachers like Vani ma'am and Hari Shankar sir to absolutely help you in every way you can. So thank you once again, Vani ma'am and Hari Shankar sir, for this opportunity. Thank you. And I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope we can have a small interactive session. I would like to invite any of the students to unmute yourself and ask any questions to the speakers of the day.
I just told you all, don't hesitate to ask good questions. My dad said one thing: if you can't speak for yourself, how do you think you're ever going to speak for other people? So as a lawyer, one thing you got to do is, wherever stage you get this stage, just make the most of it. So do not hesitate and be like, what do I ask stupid questions? Remember, no stupid questions. So you should absolutely not hesitate and use this opportunity.
I think, Navita, there's a question, please. Sri Lakshmi V has raised her hand.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Good morning to the distinguished guests. And this is a question that actually has been lingering in my mind ever since I came across this term. And when I get an opportunity to interact with such distinguished people, I don't think I should miss this opportunity. And I think I should address this question. And my question is, what is that fine line that differentiates contempt of court and fair judgment? Because this has been in the discussion for a long time. And I want to hear from the both of you your opinion and what is the right line that differentiates the both. Thank you.
So you're on mute, sir. You're on mute, sir.
I mean, the question was not very clear. There is some problem in the.
Can you just repeat it, Sri Lakshmi?
Somebody has heard it. Can frame it for me.
So my question was, what is the fine line that differentiates contempt of court and fair criticism?
You're asking this question 3 years too late, Sri Lakshmi. Whatever I say today is simply useless on this. Now, nonetheless, in theory, to say a particular, first of all, as a student, you must know contempt is of two kinds: civil and criminal contempt. Civil contempt is impeding the process of justice, whether when a judgment is sought to be executed, somebody interferes and stuff. Broadly, I'm giving a very crude example. Criminal contempt is scandalizing the court, saying something. Now, what exactly is scandalizing the court? Now, fair criticism, if you say a judgment is wrong for X, Y, Z reasons, your reasons may be right or wrong is a different story, but so long as they sound something like a reason, I don't think there is any contempt. Maybe it's only a question of difference of opinion. But if you start attacking the institution or the individual judges on grounds other than jurisprudential objections to the judgment, depending upon where you are saying it, it might constitute contempt. Suppose if you have, let us say, if your neighbor is a judge and I'm just choosing an example to explain, that's all. Don't take it, how will it happen? If your neighbor is a judge and he steals your book, to make a complaint to the police that so and so stole my book is not contempt. Or even to make a general statement that so and so. No. If it is not a fact, he might sue you for damages, that's a different story. But by itself, it is not contempt. But if you say a judge is corrupt, a particular judge, now to whom you say matters. You may still say it, because ultimately, in recognition of the fact judges can do something wrong, the Constitution provides for impeachment, so on. Even in the context of members of the lower judiciary, disciplinary action and dismissal from service are also available. Judges are also human beings. For information, long back, some 100 years back, a sitting judge for the American Supreme Court was tried for an offense of murder. Of course, he was acquitted, that's a different story. So therefore, the line is, if you are criticizing a judgment on the ground the judgment is not sound, its logic is fallacious, or its jurisprudential foundations are inaccurate, that's, in my view, it is not at all. And broadly, any judge in his right senses will agree that these are unexceptionable propositions. Criticizing a judgment, saying that the judgment is incorrect, wrong, whatever it is not contempt. Now, attacking individuals or institutions is contempt in theory, but what actually the question is, where does the line commence? Where does it become an attack on the institution, and where? As I told you, suppose a judge steals your book. To say that a judge is a thief, is it contempt? Generally saying all judges are thieves may be a contempt because without any factual foundation. But XYZ particular judge is a thief, it's a question of fact. Maybe true, may not be true. The law will have to examine that. Broadly, that's what I can say.
Thank you, sir.
In fact,
May I?
light of wind, I remember long back in the court hall when I was a lawyer, some another gentleman was arguing some matter. He was reading out a passage from a textbook. Actually, it was a textbook published by Butterworth, one of those English authors' textbook, a standard book. The learned judge, of course, was known to be very fond of, a very knowledgeable judge and very fond of books. So that man asked the lawyer in the court, well, Mr. So-and-so, just pass on that book, let me have a look at it. The lawyer, of course, on the later end said, I'll pass on the book on condition your lordships will return it to me. So, anyway, sorry.
I think there's another question.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Haridev?
So the question is simple. So what is the maximum punishment the center can get when they encroach into judiciary matters? Because these days it's happening. So what is the maximum punishment? Is it just based on moral conscience, or is there actual punishment for encroachment into judiciary?
What is the question? What is the question?
Like these days, if the center is actually trying to encroach into the judicial affairs, so if they are trying to enact laws which are in judicial matters, so is there a punishment for the center, or is there a law that prevents them doing it, or is it just based on moral conscience of the center?
I'll ask Avani to answer this question. I would rather listen to it.
Sure. I think the question that Haridev is asking is that if the center encroaches upon the judiciary, what is the punishment for it? Now, there isn't a punishment in the way we think of, for example, punishments in criminal law, but that's where the constitutional scheme becomes important. So later on in your second, third year, when you read Constitution, we have a very solid concept called separation of powers, which means that if the parliament or the central government, that is the parliament, legislature, and the executive, do anything which is encroaching upon the rights of the judiciary. For example, they make a law and they say that this law cannot be subjected to judicial review. Eventually, the matter will go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, if they find that this is unconstitutional, can strike it down. Which means that this fine balance of powers, as you call it, between the three branches of the government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, is managed not by punishment. It's not that if one encroaches the other, they can use a sword, or they can punish them in some way. But the constitutional machinery is such that one or the other will have to seek the necessary permissions. For example, if a law is passed, can that law violate the constitution? The answer is no. Who determines it? The judiciary, right? So that fine balance is managed not through punishments as we understand it conceptually, but through separation of powers, which is kind of ingrained in the various provisions of the Indian Constitution. So to be able to fully understand this question, we need to look at the scheme of the existing Constitution. Now that, of course, is theory. In practice, there is different fault lines where the pressure game is going on, right? So we are a democracy, and there is a lot of food to be given to, food of thought to be given to, where in a country there is still forces of money that make a difference in politics, right? The entire election process, how that needs to be defined, the loopholes therein. So we need to take a view that in a system which is democracy, government by the people, of the people, for the people, what is its concept in theory and what is happening in practice, and how do we bridge that gap? And that bridging the gap is a constant exercise. So, for example, appointment of judges. If the appointment of judges is a robust mechanism, then there needs to be no punishment. That judiciary will be strong enough to ensure that nobody is encroaching in its space, right? So I think the question you asked is a wonderful question, but it's a question that requires unpacking different bits. So one is always, as a law student, understanding the theory, and then B, going out in the world and understanding what is the practice, and then putting a policy designer hat on or a reformer hat on and saying, what do we do to bridge the gap? That's the best I could summarize in about a minute or so.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll give a slightly more romantic answer. I think it is Stanley Baldwin, in some context, made that statement. The only punishment is educate our masters. Who are the masters? Not the people in government, the people. People are our masters. You educate them, that is the only punishment that can be given in this circumstance. Then they'll take care of the situation.
Any more questions? I think.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Atul.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, Riyal.
Somebody is audible, but nobody is visible. There is the trouble. Anyway.
Okay.
Riyal?
First of all, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm thanking you for this wonderful session. It was really mind-blowing. So this is something an out-of-blue question. It is for you, Avani, ma'am. In this 8 years of your journey in this field, are you going to continue litigation, or you may join something like being judge, or can you please?
Yeah, Priyal.
I'll give a preliminary answer to the question.
Sure.
Becoming a judge is not entirely in her hands. There are a lot of people who will have to take the decision. She is only one of the participants in the decision-making process. Anyway, now you answer.
No, I think he absolutely said it. So yes, it is not entirely in your hands. And to be honest, I graduated in 2011, Priyal, and so I'm enrolled in 2011. So now we are, I'm like about 10 years into the profession. I was very clear that I was not going to take the subordinate judiciary route. So, you can become a judge by two means primarily. One is you sort of come from bottom up. So you write an examination, you get appointed, and then you get elevated. That's clearly a path I've not chosen. But the second, of course, is, once you've had a few years of practice in the High Court or Supreme Court, if the judges think that, you're good enough, then, of course, there could be an opportunity to be appointed as a judge. Although I must say that suggestion has been made by a lot of my near dear ones that I should contemplate entering into judiciary, but Justice Chelameswar is retired, and I need to look for fresh inspiration when I'm making that choice. So I think, to be an upright judge in this country is not easy. To be an upright person in this country is not easy. And I am very much operating from a utilitarian view, which I'm not sure, Bentham's theory. So what Bentham says, a great legal scholar, you will read Bentham's theory in jurisprudence, is he says utilitarianism, which is the highest happiness of the highest people. So yes, you can be a change maker wherever you are, but the question each one of us needs to answer is, in this big machine, where will my cog fit in for me to be able to contribute in, ensuring the largest happiness of the largest people? So I think that's also a decision that changes with the times that we live in, right? For example, a lot of people ask me, why didn't you take a corporate job? I was being offered, a job opportunity with Amar Mangal Das. It's the final year. Even before I graduated, I had a job offer. When I went to Oxford and Harvard, I had opportunities to join the law firms there. I even interned with the UN, so I could have, taken up that route. But I chose to come back to India because I thought this is where most work is needed. So at some point, we all need to choose what we call our karam bhumi, right? And I felt, let's say if I am in US and I'm talking about the human rights of other people, I'm always going to ask a question in my heart to myself, which is, where is the human rights scenario more bad? In America, yes. But if I understand India, if I've grown up in India, isn't more work needed here? So I feel that the next 25 years, yes, I want to be a litigating lawyer, but I'm also really kind of deeply trying to think about how do we reform the Indian legal system? Now, does that happen through judiciary? That happens through politics? That happens through journalism? I don't know. I started a program this beginning of this year, on 26th of January, Republic Day, with The Wire. I'm sure all of you have heard of The Wire. It's one media platform that I highly recommend that you all keep sort of tab of course, other than the legal platforms such as Live Law, Bar and Bench, etc. Basically, I run a program called Hamara Samvidhan, and it is an attempt where I make a weekly video of about 15-20 minutes, which is obviously shared by The Wire, explaining the Constitution and beginning to explain the Constitution in Hindi from start to finish. Because I think if you know English, you can do Google, but a lot of people in the country speak Hindi. So can we explain the Constitution in Hindi? Now that sprang from a realization that for a very long time, I was asked by my parents to think unidimensionally. When we do well in class 10th, our parents tell us, now do well in class 12. Then they say, now get into a good law college. Then get married, have kids, earn good money, have a good law firm. It's a unidimensional approach. Whereas what I realize with young people around the world is they are now working towards what's called a multi-hyphenate. You want to give back to society, do not wait. For example, all of you in the first year will now in the next second year, enter the second year. You know the pain of what it felt like navigating the first year. But when you are in your second year, can you come back to the orientation program of the first year students and help them with suggestions of how you did right? The Sufi way. If you're standing at a place, you take from one hand and you give from the other. So the idea is, whether it is judiciary, politics, or journalism, I don't know. I think what's needed for me is to fight for the Constitution of India, because I dream of a country where only the constitutional values can save it. And that requires saving the Indian Constitution in the first place. So only time will tell. And as Justice Chelameswar said, a lot of other factors that will play in. But the idea is, for me, in the end, the means will eventually evolve with time. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You guys are so much inspiring for us. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Atul.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the speakers for speaking. I've never thought I can receive such paramounts of knowledge, especially at this time. My question is, throughout your legal journey or your journey through law, in a sense, how do you know you're on the right path? And how? What are the different ways you can check yourself? Like, okay, I'm in the right path here. That's my question.
So maybe you want to go first, and then I'll come in with my 2 cents.
It all depends on your value system. If what you are doing is consistent with your value system, then you are on the right path. And if it is not consistent with the value system which you have set up for yourself, then obviously you will, at least from your point of view, are not on the right path. Now, whether your value system itself is the right value system or not is a different debate altogether.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Thank you.
Atul, it's a very interesting question as far as I'm concerned for me, because that's a question I find myself asking often. A couple of things. This is not going to be a comprehensive answer, but a few things that come to my mind. First is, when I began the talk, I said, write on a piece of paper, why do you think you want to do law? Trust me, that will go a long way in reminding you of what your value systems are when the going gets tough, So that's one thing. The second thing is that I have found that as we grow, we give space to a lot more voices in our heads. So when we are young, we know we have a clearer sense sometimes of what we want to do and why we want to do it. But as we, it's imagine like a small seed. Imagine a banyan tree ka seed. It's buried deep inside the earth, and it knows in its soul that it's a banyan tree. One day it's going to become and give shade to so many people. But the first time it sees, the air, the sun, and blooms out, it could be that it starts raining so heavily on the very first day. And the banyan tree is going to feel like maybe I can't even survive. I don't know how my mother, father, banyan tree, was so big. I think I'm going to die today. And then you start questioning, am I even a banyan tree? The point I'm making is that there will be many times in your life when you will self-doubt. And this is also proven by psychology, by the way, that most people who do excellent in their lives are people who are following the passions that they grew in childhood. There is also a scientific fact which I find very interesting. Those of you who haven't heard of this book, I highly recommend you read this book called Outliers, Outliers, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And the idea is he gives this magical figure that in any profession, in any time, in any place in the world, who are the people who are outside the bell curve? So the bell curve is all the people who are average, but those who are amazing, who are outside this average category, who are excellent in the field they do. What makes them different? And apart from a lot of other subjective factors, he gives this magical figure number. He says 10,000 hours. Anybody who has practiced their art, whatever it is that they're training themselves for 10,000 hours, after this magical number of 10,000 hours, your mind gets into a mental loop where you can create geniuses. Okay? And so I think that while if you think you're absolutely on the wrong track, you should, reconsider and rethink. But if you know that there was something you wanted to do in your childhood, and you think like you're swaying away because of the voices in your head, go back to it and say, how can I at the earliest complete that 10,000 hour gap? And at the end of it, I think it's so important to remember what Shakespeare said, right? To thine own self be true, and then you shall not be false to any man / woman. So if you think that you're pursuing your values, as Justice Chelameswar said, and you can hold on to it, you're on the right path, and it's not going to be easy. Sometimes there will be no money in the path you've chosen. Sometimes there will be immense difficulties in the path that you've chosen. Sometimes all the people, including those who are closest to you, will have no confidence in you. But as they say, a young person who's facing his or her career need to ask himself two questions. The first question is that if times get difficult, will I let go of my values or will I hold on to them? And if you were falling from a mountain where your world was going to come to an end, will you let go of your values or will you hold on to them? If you can hold on to your values, then I think you're in the right path. And the second thing that a young person facing his or her career need to ask is everybody says, I want this, I want that. But the question we should be asking ourselves is, what am I willing to lose? You want to be India's finest lawyer, but what are you willing to lose for it? Are you willing to put in the kind of work and miss out on friends, sometimes functions, etc.? So I think that idea of sacrificing what you want to do will also strengthen your resolve and tell you whether you're on the right path or not. So, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, I have a question for you. Did you face any kind of obstacles or discrimination throughout your journey of career, and how did you deal with it?
This question is to me or Avani?
Both can answer, sir.
Okay,
On
Avani,
based
you.
on gender or on based on race, anything.
No, sir, I actually want to hear from you. I will definitely answer this question, but I want to hear from you. Did you think that you face any discrimination?
Discrimination? No, I didn't face any discrimination. I didn't face any discrimination in that sense as a lawyer. As a judge, well, I don't call it discrimination. Certain things happened to me. I would like to discuss those things as part of systems problems, not individual.
Yeah, yeah. So, Harsha, my law school life, I felt when the education was going on, I almost felt like there was no discrimination because at the law school, we're all same. When you enter litigation, and after I came back from Oxford, I started practicing in my hometown, district court, which is Harda, Madhya Pradesh. It's a small town, and a lot of what has happened and the subtle ways in which people will comment on what you're wearing. Some lawyers will say, Oxford return, madam hai, unse puchiye. Subtle ways of sarcasm. A lot of, for example, the toxic masculinism that you see, patriarchy that you see in sometimes the way judges speak to you. Not all judges, of course, but there are judges like that in India. Or, for example, what you even feel and face in the court atmosphere. A lot of that I've talked about, in a lecture I gave at Nalsar about, litigation, damn you if you do it, damn you if you don't. It's not being, for example, comparable to women I know who faced much more severe discrimination than I did. I faced it, I was vocal and fought back. So I've always had a comeback. Till date, I've not had a situation where I felt, oh my God, this is a situation I'm not able to fight. But I know women colleagues, I know of young interns who have been fired, who have cried, who have been fired. I know of women colleagues, who have almost thought of quitting the profession, in some cases quit the profession. So I'm not going to paint a rosy picture and say it's all ideal, but I also know that there is help. There are so many more women now sort of, willing to come together if you have the heart in you. So my only point is, look at the women we have in India, right? For me, Indra Jaisingh ji is a huge inspiration for me. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a huge inspiration for me. And there is a long list of these women. I think we need to look at the best and know that there is support and reach out if you ever face, something like that. I think if you can't fight a situation individually, you will always be able to fight it collectively. And as women, the only thing for us is upwards. There is no other way but to focus on going upwards. So it's not just a question of breaking the glass ceiling, it's a question of bringing women together. And I feel as a woman who has struggled and who has got a seat on the table, then it becomes a responsibility to pull 10 more young women onto the table. So wherever you are, the easiest way of strengthening yourself is finding a team of young women who are facing similar challenges, and then you're a force to reckon with. So don't let any kind of gender-related challenge. Be aware that they exist, but do not let them stop you. That's my message.
Thank you, ma'am.
And just on that
Ma'am,
note,
I have another question.
just Haridev, just 1 second, and just on Harsha's question, I want to quickly share, a quick link on the chat box if that's all right. So this International Women's Day in March, a team of us, about 25 young people around the country, started India's first digital newspaper for women and gender issues. So we think there are a lot of platforms discussing about women, but they're talking about fashion, which is important, travel, lifestyle, entertainment, all of it is good. But I want to know, if there are young people who want to engage in this gender discourse, who want to challenge, patriarchal norms, and who want a platform to write, please consider, writing for us. It's called the Womb, THEWOMB, and I'm putting the link in the chat box. The email ID is simple, the team at gmail.com. And we are promoting young people from around India to kind of engage and write issues that are relevant to women. So if you're looking at getting publications starting from your first year, you want to engage on anything broadly gender issues, this was one of the reasons. And the reason I started the Womb, in spite of the fact that I had very little time bandwidth with litigation, was because I felt that if women are 50% of the population, we need to strengthen the voices of the women in media and provide platforms to young people to talk about what are the challenges they face. So again, be a solution provider, be a creator. So you're all very welcome to contribute to the group.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the answer. And thank you, sir.
Ma'am, I have a question. How hard is it to get into Harvard? Because many people try hard to get into Harvard, but many people fail to get. So how hard is to get to Harvard? Is there an entrance exam or some sort of examination to get into Harvard?
No, so whether there is entrance examination, do the homework, and then I'll answer. On the whether it is hard or not, nothing is hard. Nothing is hard. In fact, when I went to Harvard, I mean, listen, every year about 10 to 12 Indian students get to Harvard. How does it take in India, right? Can you not be in the top 12 students in India if you are preparing from day one of your law school? But the second point is, I don't think it's important, Haridev, to think, can I get into Harvard? I think that's a wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is, what will I do when I get to Harvard? You know, it's like I feel like Harvard and Oxford and all the world's best universities and CUSAT, I think, are like rivers. They are like our Gangas and Jamunas. They are there. The water is flowing. How big is your vessel? So when you go there, what you will be able to bring back will depend not on what the place has to offer, but how big is your own vessel. So when I went to Harvard, I wanted to be the first Indian student to be the LLM class representative. We had about 180 people, and 69 countries were represented there. And there was a proper presidential election in the American style. So there were 5 people from 5 different continents who bid for becoming, the class president. And I said, let us try this. And it was a lot of fun because you get a flavor of international politics. So I thought, okay, abhi Harvard to ho gaya. I've got into Harvard. But can I do something that no Indian student has done before at Harvard? So your yardstick, Haridev, since you're asking this question, I'm answering, is now no longer can I get to Harvard and can I become the LLM class representative. You have to not just go to Harvard, Haridev, you have to do something at Harvard that no Indian student has ever done before. So again, that has to be your yardstick.
Thank you, ma'am.
And now,
Can I ask a question?
I may have to wind up because my battery is draining out fast. My iPad, I think is likely to conk off any minute.
So I guess our time for the interactive session is almost over.
I think there is one question.
One
One person who has raised a hand.
Yes,
Maybe
yes, ma'am.
You wind up the program. Permit me to exit. That's all, in case.
Oh, sure, sir. I
Okay.
request the
In that
students to
case,
sign in.
Sorry.
Parthiv, if you can just put your question in the chat box and we can continue with the vote of thanks, it would be great.
Yeah, I will, ma'am.
Okay. Namita, can you request?
Yes, ma'am. So now I'm very delighted to invite Srimati Jean Vinita Peter, Assistant Professor of School of Legal Studies, to propose the vote of thanks. I cordially invite you, ma'am.
Thank you, Namita. Having come to the close of this induction program, it's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks. I first of all thank Honorable Justice Chelameswar for being part of this induction program. We are honored, very much honored to have your presence here, sir. As we are all aware, during his tenure, Justice Chelameswar has many remarkable judgments to his credit. To name a few, he has been part of the two-judge bench in the Shreya Singhal's case, which struck down Section 66A of the IT Act. As also, he headed the bench of the Supreme Court in the issue of privacy being a part of the fundamental rights in the context of Aadhaar. His Lordship has given us valuable insights into the legal profession, opining that we need to, apart from being successful, we need to keep our eyes open to the changing needs of the society. And our real success lies in changing the lives, in bringing about a betterment in the lives of our fellow men. On behalf of the School of Legal Studies and all of us present here, I express my sincere gratitude to you, sir, for being part of this induction program.
Thank you.
Next, I thank Advocate Avani Bansal, a young, energetic young lawyer. I believe she is a true inspiration for all the young aspirants present here. She has given valuable insights as to the choosing law as your profession or your career. She has also given tips regarding the choice of career at the end of your graduation. I thank you, ma'am, on behalf of the School of Legal Studies and all of us present here. I thank you, ma'am, for being part of this induction program and giving us valuable tips. You are really a source of inspiration for all the young aspirants present here, I believe. Next, I thank our Honorable Director, Dr. Vani Kesari, who has taken all earnest efforts in organizing this program. I also make a special mention of gratitude to my colleague, Dr. Harishankar, who has been instrumental in inviting Advocate Avani Bansal. He's also the proud teacher of Advocate Avani Bansal. I thank all my colleagues and all the young aspirants here. I believe you have valuable takeaways from this program. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you,
Right.
ma'am.
Right.
Sir.
I take
Thank
you
you,
from all
sir.
of you.
Thank you,
Right.
sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Right.
you, ma'am.
Right.
So now I request Advocate Avani to kindly answer the question in the chat box.
Yeah, Parthiv, so scholarship scene in India is generally very, very difficult, and that's something we need to change in our lifetimes. There are only 4 scholarships I'm aware of which kind of give you a full funding, like 100% funding, and those are very difficult to crack. And there is a lot of inner systemic issues sometimes in determining who gets it and who doesn't not get it. But at the same time, since you asked specifically about Harvard, Parthiv, so Harvard, as I said, is a need-based scholarship. In fact, interestingly, speaking of the information gap, Parthiv, when I was first applying for my master's, I didn't apply to Harvard because when I looked at Harvard, it was coming to about 50 lakhs. This is my time when I was applying about 10 years back, including the tuition fee and the other expenses. And all the UK universities, Oxford and Cambridge, were coming to about 25, 30 lakhs. So I said, why apply to Harvard then? It's only later I realized that actually Harvard is a need-based scholarship system, which means 180 students who come to Harvard get some form of aid or the other. How much aid will depend on how much money you ask. So, for example, if the division is about 40 to 50 lakhs, some may say, okay, maybe my parents can fund me for about 10 to 15 lakhs. I will take, a loan of 20 lakhs and maybe I get a scholarship for about 10 or 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs, right? So you have to find a way of breaking down that budget into, if you think budget is too tight, maybe work for 3 or 4 years. In any case, US universities do require you to work for a few years. If you work for a few years and then apply to US, your chances of getting in are much higher. This is not the same for UK universities. So if you've done some savings, you can put in some savings, get some help from parents, at the same time get some scholarship and some loan from Harvard, which is on a better rate than what the Indian banks afford you.
Ma'am, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I applied, I got accepted. The invitation was there, but what specifically they said that due to this COVID situations and all, we are able to provide you admission, but we are not able to provide the financial aid that you asked for.
Yeah, so during the COVID time, some universities definitely have revised their financial aid policies. So then there is really nothing much I can answer on that. You will have to explore some of the other scholarships. For example, there is a Chelameswar scholarship, there is a Fulbright scholarship, there's a Rhodes scholarship, and there's a Commonwealth scholarship. In fact, as I said in my comment box, because these are questions around law school and masters, I get asked a lot. So I've written a book called Life at Law School, which is all about what do you need to know to plan your law school really well from the very first year onwards. And I have a special dedicated section on applying for masters. I'm also very soon, in fact, on 31st of this month, doing a program with So Legal. And So Legal is India's one-stop legal platform for law students, lawyers, etc. We're doing a special program for masters because I think there are a lot of questions there. So the quick answer is that you need to first make a list of all the scholarships, both some scholarships which are 100% scholarships, the names I gave you, Rhodes Scholarship, Rhodes, Commonwealth, Chevening, Fulbright. And then you also need to figure out whether some universities have a college-specific scholarship, not university-based scholarship. For example, Oxford University has about 30 colleges under it. And each college provides different scholarships. So, for example, there's one college called Exeter, EXETER, which has a scholarship that's done by Senior Advocate Hari Salve in the name of his mother, Ambitri Salve. So there is Ambitri Salve scholarship for any Indian student who is going to Oxford University and gets accepted by Exeter College. In Oxford understanding, the university is where you will get the degree from, but then there are different colleges where your fooding and lodging takes place. So every university really has a very different system, and you need to really figure out, do a little bit of homework and figure out, depending on where you're applying, what kind of scholarships are available. If they've been revised during COVID times, I wouldn't know very much about it, but that's the thing. And
So, ma'am,
which year are you started?
I have applied for last year for the fall of 2021, but as per I can't afford a match of 60 lakhs or such, so I chose CUSAT because. By the way, I want to ask something about the Fulbright scholarship too. So, as per my research and all, I read that we need a undergraduate degree, which is an American degree of 4 years. In my doubt, I have something running on because doing this course of BA LLB or BCom LLB, can we apply for? Otherwise, we should need to get masters, and we should need some job experiences for the thing applying to.
So two things, Parthiv. Your questions are very specific to you, so I'll just answer, broadly, which I think will be helpful for everybody, and then we can always speak later on a one-to-one call. But the important point is that you need to choose which jurisdiction you want to eventually practice in to decide in which country you should have your first degree of law. The reason why most law students get their first degree, BLLB or BBLLB, in India and then go for a master's abroad is because they want to come back to India and eventually practice. There are a lot of people who want to, for example, practice in America. If that is the case, then you should do, a 4-year law degree, which is a first law degree in America. So that, of course, whichever you've had your first degree in law is where you get the basic understanding of how the law operates. So master's is essentially specialization, but your basic law degree is what will give you the essential basic legal concepts. So what are your long-term career plans and which is the country where you want to practice? Those are the factors you will have to decide whether, deciding whether you want to do, a 5-year program in India or a 4-year program in US. But for this 4-year program in US, you still need to have at least one graduate degree. So for example, there are a lot of people who do, a BA, for example, in India in political science, and then want to go on doing a 4-year bachelor's program in US. That is quite possible. So again, you will have to decide which jurisdiction do you want to practice in and make that informed choice accordingly. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Namita, Vani ma'am, anything else before?
So thank you so much, Avani, for that patience. And in fact, we would like to have you again for such inspiring talks. So stay in touch with us. And thanks a lot, Dr. Hari, for arranging this session because it was really inspiring for us. So thank you so much, ma'am, on behalf of myself as well as my institution and all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have put in my email ID and
Yes,
LinkedIn profile. So any of you need any help, remember, you're not alone. You have great mentors like Vani ma'am and Hari Shankar sir. You need any help in litigation, I am there. But remember and do not forget, do your homework. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vani ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hari sir. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, we come to the end of the program. I request all the students to kindly check the chat box regarding the details given by Avani ma'am. And thank you once again, everyone, for your kind patience, participation, and time.
I think
Thank you.
this program is available in our YouTube, in our website as well. So anybody who has missed it can definitely have a glimpse of it. So thank you all.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a good day,
Namita.
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.